Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Ultimate Live. My name is Yogesh Kapoor, and with me is Christina Will Spears, the founder of Ultimate Retreats. Christina, we're back to our Thursday Live again. What are we talking about today?
Today it's all about Mercury retrograde. We're in the Mercury retrograde season again. And there's so many belief systems around Mercury retrograde. So let's talk about that. It's really interesting because it we a lot of times it's like, oh no, Mercury retrograde is coming, and we get into almost a fear mode. It becomes fear. And it came up recently that it doesn't, that is a belief. That's our belief. And that was actually something you brought up to me several months ago. So, and I let it trickle in, I let it think, I thought about that quite a bit. And it was something that I started to think about a lot this time, because how can we use that for our highest good? How can we turn that around? And as I did,
Before
yeah,
we get into that, for those who don't really speak this astrological language, what is Mercury retrograde?
well, Mercury retrograde is basically when the planets, it's basically when the planet is slowing. They're talking about it basically going into retro. So the planet is, they're basically saying that it's slowing down, and it feels like you're basically, I'm not an astrologist so much. I wish I had Tracy on here because she would explain it in astrology terms. But basically, where the Mercury is going in, it feels like it's going backwards during this time. So where everything is slowing down. We are to slow down during this period of time. We're meant to experience a slower um, time period, or go in. A lot of times, because the planets the Mercury is slowing or going back, it technically isn't going back, but it feels like it is. That it will affect our, like, computers. It changes, a lot of, it also will change the way we speak. A lot of times people will have problems communicating with one another, or understanding what one what we're really trying to say to one another. So our communication may be a little bit more um, problematic, and we have to be a little bit more clear during this time period, because we're really truly meant to have a period of just kind of rest, relaxation, and going within, connecting within.
I get what you're saying. What are some of the things that have happened to you during Mercury retrograde?
Actually, I was thinking about that this morning before I came on, and one of the last Mercury retrogrades was one of the biggest transformational time periods. Some of the last couple, last fall and stuff. I look back and I realize that I did a lot of tremendous inner healing, and it was right at the beginning of that Mercury retrograde. I was pushing myself to do things that I hadn't done. And I wasn't going with that grace and that flow and giving myself that inner love. And so I was really trying to go to a retreat that I'd really wanted to do. And I didn't know all the information. I was feeling really, like, confused about it. Yeah, I'm gonna give you some love for that. Yeah, because there's a lot of there. Maria is saying she's been crying a lot lately. Yeah, because you're gonna feel triggered during this time. You're gonna feel like you have to. connect with yourself a little bit more. So as at that point, I was feeling those triggers and I was feeling it. And I wasn't giving myself that love and I got sick. So I didn't end up going to the retreat. But I used that time period because I'd already set aside this period of time from work, and I honored myself, and I used that time for healing, and it was extremely transformational. I was able to heal not only in my this life, but I was able to connect with many other lifetimes and heal a lot of trauma that had occurred in connection with this life during that time period. And it was very helpful. So there's a lot of inner work that can be done during those times. It was a retrograde before that I did a huge transformational healing. So it's just amazing what you can do if you don't push yourself too hard. And I have to remind myself not to do that. But it can also be a time of creativity. Because if you go in and you connect with yourself, you can find your creative abilities. You can connect with what you're wanting to bloom out, what you're wanting to manifest, what you intend for yourself. So you can open up all these new avenues and really connect with new possibilities for what's to come. And this can bring in like your manifestation. It brings forth that. So you can really bring in that intention. Oh, wow. I love to work with crystals. Maybe I want to look into crystals, or I love to paint, or I love to work in my garden. And you can really look into new avenues with that because you've really delved deep and worked with yourself.
I can relate to that, what you said earlier, especially about the triggers. I've noticed during Mercury retrograde, I usually have a lot of arguments, and my temper just soars. Not just me, the person next to who I'm arguing with, and also the communication factor. The communication gets really, what's the right word for it? There is no communication. Like there's the whole need to be right at that moment, and it can. They always say that during Mercury retrograde, it's better not to get into arguments because it could really severe relationships. And I've noticed that something that happens to me during Mercury retrograde is I somehow always lose money. Uh, One last year, I found out a technical mistake I made, which cost me $3,000. And last October, I think, was another Mercury retrograde, right?
Yeah.
And I got scammed around. How much did I get scammed? One, two, three, four, or $5,000. So
I'm thinking about that. I think there's healing to be done with that, and it's with a little bit with your root chakra, but it's the chakra below. It's right below your feet. It's not even your root chakra anymore. It's your, I can feel it. I don't know why I'm not even thinking of the name of it. Um, it's, it's the, it's your soul star chakra. Your
okay.
soul star chakra needs to be connected with your root chakra, and this will access more connection with grounding and alignment for you. And we can do that. We After this session, I'll work with you on setting something up for that, because so we can work on that. But and that's the thing. A lot of times people, Maria says Mercury retrograde is terrible. And that's the thing. A lot of people have this perception of it, and then that's what energy brings them. And so, as we change our perception and say, wow, this is an opportunity to bring us new growth or new healing. Mercury retrograde is here. Yay! Now we get to bring in inner healing. Now we get to bring in, this is a time for us to, Source is giving us a time to rest, or Source is giving us a time to look at ourselves for new possibilities, or we can look at it a different way. And as we look at it a different way, then Source will give us a new energy during this time period. But if we look at it like, oh my goodness, it's retrograde time, now we're going to have this period of nothing but bad luck, or all this stuff is going to happen, then that's what Source gives us, because Source doesn't know anything but to match our energy with the same energy.
Got it. And if someone has had a bad experience or a trauma during Mercury retrograde, living in that past attracts more of the past, of what's happened. And like you said, if they're in that frequency, that vibration of negativity. But earlier you mentioned that it's when everything slows down. And that's the time where we need to slow down. And if we slow down, that's when we reflect. And that's when the creative energies start flowing. There's an influencer I follow. She talks a lot about self-love. And she clearly says that every time people talk about Mercury retrograde, I just unsubscribe. I just unsubscribe from the idea that Mercury retrograde is bad, you know? And
Yeah,
it's more about slowing down to have that inner reflection and make a plan of what you want to do forward, what's working, what's not working. And I guess that's why they say that's a good time not to communicate, because you're just going within. So you want to stay away from what is distracting you from outside or energies from outside, because this is the period where you reinvent yourself. And
exactly.
what and it's interesting because, like always, I always pull a card at 11:11.
And I
And
love
today,
hearing what your cards have to say too.
well, today's card is Moksha of Kali.
What's that? I love the picture.
Moksha basically means when you are released from, it's something like enlightenment, but it's like you get moksha. So that means you're away from the human life, basically, right? You finished your cycle of the human life. You
Interesting.
don't you don't keep coming back. But what's moksha of Kali? I'm gonna have to go through the whole uh, detail of it because I'm still very new with this deck, and I'll
Yeah,
probably tell you later.
that's interesting. That's an interesting card. Yeah. So, yeah, because all of this, it's just opening up, and if we are being triggered, it's a time to say, okay, what is that trigger? What is this telling me? Because if it, a lot of times those triggers are just messages, internal, subconscious messages, or not even a lot of times, almost 100% of the time. So it's common that if we're going to be triggered, we're going to be triggered during Mercury retrograde because it's a time to rest and reevaluate. So it makes total sense that this would be the time to be doing it, because we're reevaluating. We're saying, okay, what are we needing to let go of? And what are we needing to, instill new in our next chapter? And so
Exactly.
that's why we've decided not to do any retreats, events, activities during Mercury retrograde, because it's just a time to rest and honor ourselves. It's a beautiful time to just kind of like say, okay, this is for us, for all of us. And and, and as we do this, and then there was a couple comments I had noticed in Eventlight recently, in posts, and one of them was they were talking about how they were having problems with fear. And
Hmm.
kind of connected with this. Fear correlates with going within, because every time we have, unless there is a fire in the room, or we are, you know, um, bleeding, you know, ble- actually bleeding out, or something is actually right in the middle of happening where we're in a panic state. Fear is meant to, initially, fear was meant to put you in a fight or flight mode, back in the initial caveman days. And so when we're in fear, it's telling us, what is there that we are, what are we afraid of? Is this something that is, you know, because a lot of times, if we're in a constant state of fear, then it's not, it affects our whole body, and we can't see the whole picture, because we stay in that adrenaline state, and then we're not able to see the whole picture. That state was meant to get, to keep us strong, and to keep us so we could fight that bear, or run 1,000 miles to get safe, or do what we needed to do. But when we're always in that fear state, we have that, adrenaline running through us, but we're not seeing, our whole brain is not working correctly. So to be able to release that fear state and see the rest of the picture um, is really important.
Well, yeah, because you see, fear is in our DNA. Something I teach my students is, what, especially when we do public speaking, is why do we feel fear? And I tell them, it's in our DNA. Even I feel fear before I have to go live, or I have to speak, or I have to teach. But it's there. We used to fight dinosaurs, saber-toothed tigers, like what you said, being attacked by all these animals. So that DNA gets passed on. But it's always in that moment choosing your being, right? I mean, when you're in that frequency of fear, you're just creating more of fear. And when you just choose a more aligned being, when you're being yourself, that's when everything just falls into place. And unfortunately, there are just too many people who don't understand what fear actually is, right? There's an acronym to this, like false evidence appearing real. Like how many times they play that story in their head about this conversation they'll have with their spouse or their children, or what their boss is going to say, and it never even happens. But they just want to live in that state because they feel protected, like, oh, if this is going to happen, how am I going to counter this, what am I going to say, and all that. And they stop living. They
Mhm.
just literally stop living.
Well, and it's the same thing with fear. If you're constantly in a fear mode, source is going to give you things to be afraid of. But if you're in a um, mode of, wow, life is beautiful, I see all these things in my life that's beautiful, then source is going to show you things to be that is beautiful. So that's where, when you're having problems, or you're overwhelmed, or even when you're afraid, if you can drop that and change your perspective, it really changes things for you. And same with pain. Pain, um, I spent 20 years in pain. And so pain is really interesting, because pain, um, is your subconscious again. And it's telling you that there's something more you're not seeing. Every time I'm in pain, whether it's a headache, my foot hurting, it doesn't matter what part of my body, I'm like, whoa, what am I not seeing? So it's always my subconscious telling me that there's something more that is going on. And usually a it's energy, obviously it's emotions or something that I have shoved down so much that I'm not paying attention to the point where it's become pain. And that's where quantum healing is very helpful. But if you're not into quantum healing, even doing Reiki or meditations, sometimes I can get it with a meditation and say, whoa, where is that pain from? So whatever it works for you, you know, uh, for a long time, I'd been going through so much pain that I had, quantum healing was very helpful because then it released many levels of it. If you're one of those people that shoves it down so much and you don't even know what pain is which, then that's where it is. But if you just have a little bit of pain here and there, then Reiki or meditations is going to work.
Well, since you mentioned this, I guess a lot of fear on Mercury retrograde is always, like I said, it's like being in the past, right? Something happened, and all this fear factor about everyone talking about it. It's Mercury retrograde. It's Mercury retrograde. But they don't look at the bright side of it. They don't look at the factor that this is the time to slow down. This is the time you can really use Mercury retrograde to your advantage, right? And like you said so perfectly, if you're going to let out the fear, the universe is just going to answer. You know, um, I always shift my being, and people think you need hours and hours to get rid of your fear, but no, you can shift that being immediately. We've seen it in children, and I'll give you a very good example of that. Have you ever seen a child cry? Of course you have. You have children. Uh, they're crying, and then suddenly you pull out a lollipop or a candy.
Yeah.
What happens?
Or their
Boom.
favorite toy.
Yeah.
Even their favorite toy, you're like, oh, you see this truck? You see this? Or, and all of a sudden they just change. They'll stop for
Yep.
mid-cry. Yeah, it's like magic.
Exactly. And that's where you have to start focusing, right? During Mercury retrograde, stop focusing on what can go wrong and focus on what can be right about this situation. I what you mentioned earlier, it's the most best time to be creative because you're sitting down with yourself, you're writing, you're journaling, you're doing something, and you're asking yourself what's worked, what hasn't worked, right? I recently heard a speech. It said, slow down to speed up.
Yeah.
And I think Mercury retrograde makes the best sense of it, right? Slow down so you can speed up. What's working, what's not working? What do you got to change about yourself? If you're a coach, oh, I've been giving this offer, it's not working. Why is it not working? Right? I've been trying to get beyond a certain limiting belief. Why is it not? Why am I not being able to get forward from that limiting belief? I see you have some comments there you want to read.
Yeah, I do. Christine says, "Good. I would like good things to good things to me, good things coming to me." Nancy Numis says, "I can completely relate. I've worked on my energy, putting in a bubble of protection around me. Do other things to decrease the chances of absorbing other people's energies and emotions." And Marcus says, "Good Thursday morning." So, oh, and then Martia says, "I'm an empath. I feel people's emotions. I'm told that that just talking to me, they feel free and very calm. People mention they feel relief, but I think I haven't learned to let go of the emotions that are not mine. Even my past comes to the picture." Yeah, that's very common of empaths, is to absorb it but not know how to release it, and to just hold it all in. Yeah, that's very,
What
very
are some of the tips you would give for releasing it?
grounding. Grounding is very, very important because empaths like to live up here and not in the lower chakras because they're very they're very aware So it's very important to be able to release and be able to ground on a regular basis, um, because then you're releasing that energy back into Mother Gaia and to the earth and connecting. Um, then it's also bringing you back and connecting with your own. The more you ground, the more you're also connecting with your own gifts. Um, you you're going to find whether you like water or you like to work with the trees or both. Some people like wind, some people like water, some people um, like using fire. Honestly, I like using all of the elements in different ways. Um, then there's also as far as releasing, there's so many different ways. Using salt baths are really, really for doing that as well. And also like essential oils, all the like the tree oils are really, really helpful for grounding. Frankincense is also helpful just to use up and down your spine for that. And all the like the black and white crystals are really, really good. It says, Maria, you probably saw your inner child in him. Do you mess up? Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know what that. Yes, I can. It says, Maria says, yes, I can relate to the bubble, but these little souls just hit him. I saw a little kid playing, but in the eyes, I can see all of his hurting. I just wanted to remove it, at least a little. Since then, I've been crying. I guess that's why. That's my way of letting it go. And then they said, you probably saw your inner child in him. Yeah, there's ways to work through that inner child, and you can also give that child energy. You can send that little child so much love, and because we're all healing in the now, whether that child is 30 or 80 or 20, it doesn't matter. We're all healing in the now. So you can give that little child energy and love. And I love to do stuff like that. But it's good to ask for their permission if, to before you tap in and stuff and do that. So we're getting kind of off subject.
It's okay. At least the comments are there, so we know what people are
Yeah.
facing or going through, and uh, it's always good when people share their stories because there's so much learning there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful, really. It really truly is. And it's a time of healing, and it's almost like I've been feeling like we're going through new layers of our heart healing, all of us. I've been getting messages from all kinds of people that there's all kinds of inner heart activations going on and healing going on. And it's just so beautiful that it's happening for so many people on so many different levels, all over the place. So really, it's just a blessing that so many people are experiencing this and are working through this, because it means that it just shows how we're all so connected. We're all so connected in such a heart level.
I can relate to the person who mentioned about being an empath, because I think I'm one too. I feel people's energies, and crowded places really makes me anxious. And I didn't understand that before till later. I realized that why that was happening to me. That's another reason I left Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a very densely populated place, and you barely see anybody smiling. So I knew that environment wasn't correct for me. Obviously, that time I didn't understand grounding and all these different modalities of healing and how to protect my energy and stuff. But it's very important, especially during Mercury retrograde, to release those energies and ground yourself, like you said. What else? What else have you benefited during Mercury retrograde?
Well, I usually use this time to set aside and really analyze what I'm going to do for the next several months forward, how I'm feeling about things. And I really kind of connect with myself as deep as possible on as many different levels, because then I can put forth how I'm going to go forward. And this brings out so much clarity. It brings so much clarity. And then I use that creativity to install um, new foundation. And then as I manifest that, I can activate it. And as I start doing that, when I get out of Mercury retrograde, I notice that my manifestations go way faster, because it's like I've used all of the internal energy of working with Mercury retrograde. And then when I get out, it's almost like a boomerang effect, if that makes sense, because I've used it for my highest good instead of saying, oh, this is a bummer. I'm saying, gosh, this is great. And I'm eating it up. So then and I've been doing that probably for like the last 9 months to a year or more, about, and it maybe even a little bit more. And it's really added to how things have gone, because it's just like when I get out, it pushes everything forward instead of it going slower. Everything seems like it goes forward 3 times faster.
Like I said, slow down to speed up.
It really does. It's that analogy is perfect. It's perfect, because I take this time, I go in, I'm slower during retrograde. I purposely take time off, and I've been spending more time with my family during this time. When I have hit my limit at work, I can feel it, and I honor myself a whole lot during this time. Turn off the computer, turn off everything. I don't even answer my phone after a certain point. And it's like I honor myself completely. And then I spend a lot more family time. And then afterwards, and me time as well. I've been doing like more meditations, more creative work, that kind of stuff. I start spending more time in the garden, all kinds of different things like that. And then it gives me more ability to create what I need for my my platform, for what I'm going to do forward. And it's like, oh, I know how I'm going to connect these things, or I know what I'm going to do here. And it just naturally, I get the downloads and I get the inspirations, because I've rejuvenated myself.
Makes total sense. Makes total sense because you got to let in space, right? You got to empty space to let new space come in. I remember, I don't remember the speaker's name, a very famous speaker. He was talking to a lady and she said, I want to get married and stuff like that. And she told him, have you made space in your cabinet? Like, why do I need to make space? And it was a he or she, I can't remember. And she said, if you don't make space, how will your spouse bring their clothes in? And it was a really interesting conversation. And what exactly you're saying is that, right? When you move away from the daily routine and all that work you're doing and you let space for the other things, then there is room for the flowing of energy, right? You're working on your creative energy, gives you like the divine and divine masculine, divine feminine, what we spoke about in the last few weeks, right? There comes a point where you get blocked and you need to let that flow. And if you're too much in the divine masculine, the divine feminine's not working. And then you get all those blockages and everything. So I think Mercury retrograde is the perfect time to get an alignment of the flow of energy. Like even today, I was sitting and by myself and having my coffee, like taking time off, and I got an idea immediately, and I was like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? But if I didn't take that time off and I was just running, 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 I would have never come up with that idea that I've been thinking about. I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that totally, because sometimes you have it, but you're so much in that day to day work that but when I just went in and I just took it easy, I played the music I love. I said, hell with whatever work I have right now. Let it be. Let just be. And boom, it just came crashing in. I was like, oh yeah, that'd be amazing idea for my next project, uh, in my speaking industry.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're just giving yourself the space to absorb and think things through. Yeah, and it's wonderful. Sometimes just sitting in my garden or just having this peaceful moment, I get the best information. Yeah. But if you don't give yourself that 5, 10, 20 minutes, you would never know. And a lot of times we're so busy with running here and running there that we don't honor ourselves. So,
Exactly.
exactly. So,
So, are there any other comments?
um, just says, yes, I can feel exactly what you both are feeling at the moment. I will work on realizing. So, I'm thinking that might be relaxing, but I might be realizing. And then I think that's it. So, yeah, that's wonderful.
So if anyone has any questions, just put it in there before we end our live today. Um, I hope there's some good insights for you for Mercury retrograde. It's a good time to reflect in, journal, do many things.
Nancy says, "Wow, this was all for me. You have no idea. This was further confirmation of a lot of things." You're very welcome, Nancy. So, yeah.
Well, I guess if there are not any questions, we'll keep our live a little short today so that we can give time to people to go within and reflect and take it easy. And thank you so much, Christina, for today's live. I look forward to next Thursday. Those of you that watch the replay, do leave comments or hashtag replay. And we will be back next Thursday with another interesting topic for all of you. So thank you, everyone. See you again next Thursday. Bye bye.
Bye.